What's going on, guys? I am back. Please excuse my tardiness for not posting yesterday before DLNS. I have a pretty good reason, though. I was getting ACL surgery done for my knee that I tore back in January, so I was not able to cover the games yesterday. I am catching back up right now. I was able to watch Game 3 of the FPSL on Melee Creeps, so I already have all the results. I was watching the Buff and Warriors series this morning. Had a super interesting comp they're playing double pick. They're playing Rem with like very little front line. Their classic cosmetical GT stuff, so looked great. And the biggest news is they're back to being Buff and Joyers. So Buff and Joyers was one of Deadlock's first ever teams. So with them renaming from Loki W to Buff and Joyers, I felt like it was the perfect time to kind of do a deep dive on this team. So Buff and Joyers was formed on September 9th of 2024, consisting of Mikhail S, D-Mob, Listic, Piggy, Shark, and Zergy. So for those who don't know Mikhail S was pretty much considered the best player in the world at the time in 2024 until like early 2025, or like mid 2025, I guess. And this team was very, very good. They won the first ever like big prize pool event, which was Aurora Deadlock Masters. Were consistently first or second in pretty much all the events they played. And in this Aurora Masters, they did very, very well. Sorry, I'm on my mom's 10-year-old laptop right now, so this is as scuffed set up as it gets, as my PC's upstairs, and doing stairs right now is not exactly in the cards. So this was 2024, September 6th. And this team was more like a show match event, more than an actual like tournament. Buff and George were really the only like true team to be like a legitimate pro team that showed up to this. Everyone else was kind of like thrown together teams like Hydration, Lefa together. Jam Side was on one of these teams. D-Mob was on Team Recruit. I don't know how to say it. But of course, with being the more organized team, Buff and Joyers actually goes on to win this event. And with Buff and Joyers being one of the first ever teams, they also belong to the longest rivalry in the game, versus Abraham's. So obviously, if you include the Loki W timeline, they have the most head-to-heads of any two teams in the entire scene. So Buff and Joyers is quite legitimately our first real legit team. And they also played in an era that was very, very competitive. I would say EU in this timeline was just kind of like flooded with talent in a lot of ways. Not a lot of people were like excited just to get into the scene at the time. Again, this is like beginning of 2025. The game is like kind of blowing up in EU. So when you look at these teams, like OneWin was the first org to invest. They're not exactly like a big esports org, but they were more. OneWin was more trying to kind of make a splash with Deadlock. I do believe they have a CS:GO team. I don't know if they have since continued into CS2. I don't follow the scene too closely. So they were more trying to be kind of like the first big name that was in Deadlock. And then obviously you're going to remember some names on these teams like Overseas, Flammable, Empty Dreams, who we'll get into later. Mikhail S, D-Mob, Listic, Opium Shark, Zergy was the roster at the time. With this, TAS together are playing for Paravision, which I think Paravision eventually goes on to become Leviathan, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, though. And this event goes the way of Buff and Joyers, so they win 2-1. And because of what we showed earlier with their early dominance with Buff and Joyers, winning a ton of events, they actually go on to get signed by Virtus Pro. So Virtus Pro was, like we were talking about, OneWin was a established but not like a huge esports team. Virtus Pro entering the scene at the time was insane. They bring in Lightbringer to coach, and this was like a huge legitimacy moment for Deadlock, where a true like top end esports team was like entering the scene. The game was like very, very still early development, but I think Virtus Pro's idea was, hey, probably by like 2026 or like Q4 2025, there will be like a true scene that develops, or the game will leave closed beta, and you're kind of going to see this game blow up, right? And in the beginning, Virtus Pro's investment kind of pays off. The Buff and Joyers guys do very well under the Virtus Pro name, I guess. They win 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of their first events, get a second, and then continue to have a lot of success. They're also having a lot of success in, I would say, one of the more competitive Probably the most competitive, like I was talking about earlier, but this is probably the more competitive side of things. The 1-1 tournament was a huge event here, 10K tournament. Again, a lot of names you're going to remember here. Flammable, Empty Dreams, like we talked about earlier. Mikhail S, Demov, Listic, Obikim, Shark, and Zergis, the Virtus Pro roster at the time. Paravision has Tasked Together, like we said. And then also Aegis Aurora. This is ABL's first like true big team that he plays for. Hapex is on this team. Fremok is on this team. Sonya's on this team. I was trying to pronounce this earlier. I could not figure out Polajaya Skimbiora. I'm sorry, I butchered that so bad. But Piggy's on this team, Jamside's on this team, Saint's on this team. So even with the scene being very early on in 2025 here, you are seeing a lot of big names start to enter the scene, and a lot of people who are still around the scene today. And of course, despite having a poor round robin where they end up going 4-3, Virtus Pro actually does go on to win this event 3-1. So again, Virtus Pro is very pumped that their team is doing well, having good performances early. And then when I was talking about the most competitive time, this was Fight Night at the time, Fight Night number 26. And if you just look at these are the top 3 teams in EU at the time, right? So Virtus Pro has Mikhail as Demov, Listic, OPM, Shark, Zergi, as mentioned. Abrahams at the time has Together, Tass, Saf, Saint, Jamside, and Hoot. Hoot, this is Hoot now entering the scene on like a major team, not just playing with like random teams. And then 1-1 at a time was ABL, Overseas, Xenon, Flammable, and Empty Dreams. Like these are just big names, right? Like the fact that this was early 2025 or midway through 2025, I should say, and these are the top tier teams in EU is like kind of crazy. Like that this was, I would say this is the most competitive EU has ever been. When you just look at the top end talent that's on these rosters, it's pretty insane. And Virtus Pro go on to win this fight night. And then things kind of start to change a little bit here. So, there we go. So Buff and Drawers will actually get dropped by Virtus Pro at August 25th of 2025. Again, there was a big assumption that the scene was going to kind of explode towards the end of Q4 of 2025. That, of course, didn't end up happening. The game is still in closed beta today. So Virtus Pro, being just a well-ran esports team, eventually goes, okay, we kind of need to get out of the scene. Like, the financial investment here just doesn't make sense. There's not enough big prize pool tournaments. The night shift is, like, at the time, like, 1K to, like, 1.5K per week. It just doesn't make sense. So they do leave the roster. So they do leave the scene, and Virtus Pro goes back to being Buff and Drawers. And at the time, also what happens is Mikhail S abruptly leaves the scene as well. So Mikhail S, like we talked about earlier, was considered one of the top pros in the scene at the time. And Hoot replaces him, so he leaves Abrahams and joins the team, which was also like pretty confusing at the time. Abrahams don't really know why they wanted to drop Hoot. Don't really have the backstory there. Pretty insane that even happened. Again, with Hoot being like probably a top 3 player in EU, top 5 on some people's list, depending on the day. Just leaves Abrahams and joins Buff and Drawers to be on the super team. So, this is kind of the beginning of the end, though, once Mikhail S steps away from pro. Mikhail S wanted to go back to school. I believe he's 19 or 21 at the time, in that range, and was just, again, the money just wasn't there yet, right? So a lot of the top end talent just kind of goes like, I'm going to be kind of like chill, be like a content creator, casually part-time while I go to school. So this leads us to the Night Shift Trolley Open in Europe. This is November 24th of 2025. This is, again, one of the bigger tournaments at the time, 10K prize pool, very big deal. Very stacked teams in this tournament. Like we just talked about, the Buff and Drawers roster, the new Abrahams roster, Jamside, Saf, Saint, Tasked Together, and Sonya. I believe Sonya replaces Hoot. If I'm not mistaken, I believe they wanted an all Russian-speaking roster, so I think that was actually the reason Hoot got pushed out, I guess, if that's what you want to do. And again, Sonya was like considered like an up-and-coming talent at the time. Was not new to the scene, but was like hadn't been on like a top-level team yet. So, and if you look around here, this is Mel Team. This is ABL's new team that was formed for this tournament in particular. Empty Dreams, ABL, Flammable, Overseas. OC's first huge tournament here too. This is OC's first like big event where he comes in. A couple other teams down here. Yoho Yosho Ho Yo Yo. Fantastic name. Piggy Team. This is Tanner's also first big event that he plays in. Mazo G's first big event. And also for Fearless Furries was still together at the time. And they participate in this event. So this event has a group stage that goes through. But the crazier thing that happens is Buff and Joyers actually lose to Meal Team. So ABL gets his first huge event win. By the way, a lot of people were asking about the making an ABL video. I think there's an announcement at the end of this video that I'm going to help promote because actually these videos do pretty well now. So I'll be promoting that, and I think I'll do an ABL video right before that event that is going to be announced later in the video. It's already been announced, but I kind of want to signal boost this event. So why this tournament is super insane is because after this, Dimov abruptly leaves Buff and Joyers. He goes with Dimov to join Abrahams. So the new Abrahams roster is Saint, Task Together, Sonya, ABL, Dimov. And the remaining Buff and Joyers roster ends up being Hoot, Listic, Obikim, Shark, Zergy, and Cosmetical. And then again, Fearless Furries is still a team at the time together. And Abrahams goes on to beat Buff and Joyers. And this will actually turn out to be the last night shift they play together. Before Zergy announces that the team is disbanding. So Buff and Joyers is no longer, and the team is canceled going into 2026. So that is a huge news. Zergy leaving the scene was a really big deal. Zergy obviously being one of our bigger streamers. He was a huge part of the pro scene, pulled a lot of viewership into the pro scene. And again, this was orchestrated by Dimov leaving the team, joining Abrahams with ABL, and Buff and Joyers just kind of fall apart. They pick up Cosmetical for the one night shift week, but after that, they just kind of call it wraps. Until later on, my better level is low. GG, we got to get rolling. Until Loki W returns. So Lightbringer comes back into the scene. He brings a roster of Cosmetical, Blob, Doe, Trax, Captain, and Vrake into the scene. So you will see Cosmetical and Vrake are the core that will stick around later on into Loki W's history. And they don't do very well. In the beginning of Loki W, does not go great. They lose in the Challenger Series here. And then you're going to see more and more roster swaps as things are going on. Cosmetical, Blob, Doe, Trax, Captain, Vrake play one more time together. Hams at the time now adds Hoot to the roster. Hoot was looking to get back into the scene, but again, he wanted Buff and Joyers to come back, but Zergy wasn't committed to coming back to the scene yet, so he just eventually joins Abrahams. Hops onto them. And then Buff and Joyers will take on Abrams in the challenge match of night shift number 31. So we're jumping ahead here over to 2026, March 25th. And it's going to be Cosmetical, Obikim, Empty Dreams now, Mazaji, Listic, and Vrake. So this is a much upgraded roster from what we were seeing before. Just more like established pros join the team. But they're still struggling to compete with Abrahams because this roster is absolutely insane. Together, Hoot, Debuff, Taz, Sonya, Saint. This is this is probably the most stacked Hams roster ever, I would say, probably. So then we keep moving forward into the next series. Dead frag loading. This is 2 months ago. And then you actually see the return of Hoot to Buff and Joyers. This one was even more confusing. Before, Abrahams wanted the all Russian-speaking roster before, but Mikhail S. announces he's coming back into the scene. But Mikhail S.'s return to the scene is very short-lived. So they boot Hoot again to get the full Russian-speaking roster. And then Mikhail S., I believe, plays 2 night shifts and then quits pro again. So Hoot gets booted from Abrahams a second time for an all Russian speaking roster, and it's just insane. But it leads to the team's now Listic, Empty Dreams, Cosmetical, Vrake, Obikim, and Hoot. So this is essentially like the main core of Buff and Joyers. Lightbringer are still coaching with Loki W now. And so, that boy returns. Loading. Is my PC gonna live? Zergy reunites with Buff and Doors on Loki W. So Zergy returns to Pro Play 2026, April 14th. And he comes back to, honestly, a lot of like criticism. Zergy was honestly kind of playing the game for fun. Zergy's a great personality, has a lot of fun with the game. I feel like that's something that's very underrated about him. But his pool was not exactly pro level at the time. So then we fast forward to the first ever DSI Europe. This is in April 11th. And the rosters of here are now one of the more stronger Leviathan rosters. OCs, Overseas, Rake, Fremont, Sai, Arizumi. Loki W is now pretty much the original Buff and Joyers core, except adding Hoot. So Zergy, Hoot, Cosmetical, Rake, Listic, Obikim. And Abrahams at the time was Arzo, Sonya, Zikbob, Together, Tass, and Saint. And Melee Creeps is also in this tournament. The EU and NA DSIs are not region locked, so anyone can enter the tournament. And Abrahams go on to win this tournament, and Loki W finishes third. So again, Loki W's initial start was not going the hottest. Was not going great. It was kind of a mixed bag of results. And Zergy was coming under a lot of fire because he wasn't playing very meta stuff. So at the time, Wraith was not meta. Wraith was not like an M1 that was played a lot. Zergy was kind of like sticking to that a little too much. But eventually they do turn things around. So Zergy starts playing things like Warden again, not very meta at the time, and Viper. So once he starts playing the Viper, they actually start to see quite a bit of success. So this is the first Night Shift EU they win with Zergy's return. They beat Abrahams 2-1. This is also in like Celeste meta, Geist meta type of thing. And then after that, they actually have an extremely dominant R1 tournament. R1 being a EU only huge tournament with a couple like floor men showed up for this. So I guess it's not a EU only, but mainly EU tournament, 10K prize pool. They ended up doing quite well, go 5-0 on it, and they 5-0 Abrahams in particular because they get a first round bye. So this is like a big deal at the time. This is the first time Loki W has beat Abrahams in a tournament. They then go on. Then they go on to beat them in Night Shift again. They 2-0 them. Break is playing his Celeste. Zergy still staying on the Viper. Zergy was showing a lot of great macro with the Viper pick here too. He was the first person I saw on Night Shift like proxying waves and really abusing Viper's movement in a very like tactical way, I would say. And then they eventually go on to play in Death Slam Invitational NA, where they end up finishing second, only behind Melee Creeps. Or Melee Creeps has a very, very good tournament. This is when Floorman's around. This is when Abrahams comes in. So the NA DSIs tend to be a little bit more of a mixed bag. So Burb the Clock is in here. Chubby Bunnies is in this tournament as well. This was Goober, Braden, Lord Nem, Calc, G-Freak, Zersby. So this was a very competitive DSI. And they end up, again, finishing second to Melee Creeps. On ping, like that's not bad at all, finishing second on a tournament like this. They return to EU for a Night Shift number 42, where again they start actually even leading even more into like the unique hero pools. Mina comes back into the meta. Mina had not been played in a long time. Ever since they nerfed her alts. It's like max % health nerf, and can no longer proc love bites, I'm pretty sure is how it works. So no one was picking Mina at the time. They pick it 2 times in a row for cosmetical and just completely stomp Abrahams 2-0. And that brings us to today, where they are now back to being Buff Enjoyers. Again, because like the majority of the roster is pretty much the original core. Lightbringer is still coaching, so it just makes a lot of sense. And another reason I wanted to get this video out now is Guildhouse has now been announced. So first ever pro LAN is going to be happening. Obviously Deathy threw the first ever LAN a little bit ago. But this will be the first pro team centric event. 40 plus PCs, stage, streaming equipment, large event ready space, fully equipped. So this will be essentially like our breakout tournament into having a LAN scene in Deadlock, which will be super cool. If you want to support this event, please reach out to Peer. Peer is still looking for sponsors to sponsor the event. Ido's going to be doing a subathon for this event. So if anything you can donate will really help. The whole idea is if we can get the prize pool to, it's a little optimistic, but like $75,000 per se, then that can make the EU's teams go, okay, well, if we at least get third, we can like pay for our travel, or at the very least, right? So I really hope the EU teams do come out for this. This could be like our kind of like shining moment of showing off the pro scene. Shout out to Guildlock, and Pierre is going to be essentially PAing the entire event, making sure everything's running smoothly. People have proper warm-up time. And yeah, so that's kind of my breakdown of Buff and Jor's history. Super interesting team. Like they've just gone through so many different roster changes. They've gone through so many different name changes. So it only fell right with them being in super dominant fashion. Fun fact: they have only lost to one EU team since April 29th. So as I've talked in my other videos, where it was kind of like the I actually did a hydration video because I thought this announcement was going to be the return of hydration, but we've kind of gone from now like the hydration era to the melee creeps era to now I think we are legitimately entering the buff and drawers era. I think this team looks absolutely unstoppable. They're playing their own stuff, which is always like a really key sign to like this team is really in tune with how they want to play the game, how they want to win. And I really hope that they get to show this at the Guildlock LAN event. So thanks again for watching, guys. For the 12% of you that actually watch the end of the videos, just remember, as the wise British philosopher once said, stay gooning. Peace.